Thanks to all of you for coming. If you are not familiar, we are with the Flower of Life Center for Human Evolution, and that is an organization that is volunteer-based here in the Detroit area. But we have volunteers all over the world that support our mission, which is to further human consciousness in all areas. So we're working in a variety of different areas to help bring this movement forward into a more mainstream conversation, because it's time, right? That more people are talking about this. And I think that with what's going on the planet lately, more and more people are coming to the realization that there is a need to seek out others that are also experiencing spiritual awakenings, communication, right? That sort of thing. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. If you're interested in the Flower of Life, please, talk to me afterwards. We have so many opportunities for you to get involved. We have a very large expo here that we do in the Detroit area, which if you are in this area, you just don't want to miss. We bring in experts from all areas to speak on a variety of different topics: spirituality, consciousness, energy healing, technology, the whole ET conversation. We've got some amazing speakers coming in this November. We have a youth group, a youth movement, where we bring kids together who are having these experiences to talk about that. And I've been a first-hand participant in that, and it's just an amazing program. So we're making some changes and tweaks to that now, and we're ready to launch it bigger. So if that's something you're interested in getting involved with, now is the time. We believe in conscious activism. That means not complaining about the problem, but supporting the solutions and getting the solutions out there so people understand where they can go, what they can do, products they can use, technologies that are coming towards us now. And there's so many, right? There's so many that the mainstream news is just not talking about, right? So I have had a very interesting journey in my life. And for those of you who've sat through my story, I'm sorry, but whenever there's new people that come, I always like to share. And I'll be real brief, and then we'll talk more about what's going on here on the planet. But I truly believe everyone here today and beyond is a channel in some way. We are all designed to be channels for spirit guidance. And if you don't know what channeling is, raise your hand. I'm assuming all of you know, since you're here. Everyone is tuned to do this differently. Some of us, we are tuned to bring messages in through the body. Some of us through our sight, some of us through sound, which is where I started. Even now, what the guides that I work with have been talking about is that communication is becoming far more integrated with us, meaning it's easier. The way that we telepathically exchange on the planet with each other as humans and beyond to our galactic families is becoming more cohesive. And the reason for that is we've raised our frequency here to the point where it's starting to flow in almost as a knowing, right? And so it's almost harder if you don't realize what you're doing, because it's so easy to think it's you, right? How many of us are like, that couldn't have been, right? Well, now those messages are coming in faster. They're coming in more integrated as a part of who you are. And all of those messages we're receiving are meant to be shared in some way, not literally the way that I do it, right? But through your creative energy. So this was not something I intended to do with my life. I lived a very mainstream world, mainstream mom, had a degree in marketing, PR, lived in that world for a very long time, was very successful career woman, traveled around and worked my way up the ladder. I was the marketing manager over 5 offices in the Midwest for an environmental company. Got married, decided to have kids, and was, completely prepared to leave my daughter at daycare, do that whole career mom thing. And I just couldn't do it. I had a really hard time leaving her at daycare, to the point where I literally walked in and quit this incredible job in one day. I just said, I'm done. And decided to stay home and made it work. Loved that life. And I am that A-type personality. I'm the firstborn. I do everything to a T. I'm a perfectionist. So all of that career energy that I was, funneling into the marketing world, I took home with me, put into volunteer world. I was at volunteer mom. I was the dance mom. I was a soccer mom. I was the PTA vice president. I worked as the neighborhood social committee organizer, you name it, local church, did the whole thing. And really just lived in that world for a long time, loved it. And what I believe is that when we're not living our truth, we're going to get many knocks on the door along the way, interruptions, if you will, in our lives that will help us to get back on track. And that's exactly what happened to me. These knocks on the doors are often things that we don't enjoy. They're usually very karmic and they don't feel so good. And I had started to experience chronic pain. It was actually after the birth of my second daughter. I have two children. And this pain was in my hip, my back, my leg. And I started going to practitioners, doctors, right, healers, was in that mainstream medical world, right, every year with my insurance card, going back, getting the diagnosis, getting all of the tests and prescriptions and all of that. And every year getting worse and worse and worse. Nothing was getting better. To the point where I had so much pain, I had started to experience numbness in both of my legs. I was afraid to drive my children. I was on so many, anti-inflammatories, painkillers. I was even prescribed antidepressants because they thought I was going a little crazy because they couldn't find anything wrong with me, right? Washing it down with alcohol, 5 o'clock, right? Started making dinner, glass of wine. And what happened to me was I lived in this really beautiful neighborhood. So it was this family feel where everyone took care of everybody. Everyone had kids the same age. And everyone took care of me. So they all knew of my condition, right? And they would call me and say, hey, let me get your kids off the bus. You don't need to go down there today. I know you're not feeling too good. Or give me your grocery list. I'm running up to the market. I'll get what you need. And so I didn't have to get better there. There was no reason that I had to get better. I was numbing myself. I was on painkillers. Everyone was taking care of everything. I was large and in charge in the volunteer world. Well, then my family decided to make a move. There was a career change, and we needed to move from one side of town to another. It was not at all in favor. As a matter of fact, I was digging my heels in because I didn't want to go. So I ended up across town, made a move into a new neighborhood where I couldn't make a friend to save my life. It was like completely different world, right? I didn't know anyone there. Nobody knew me. I thought, I've got this volunteer thing down pat. Let me just kind of work my way into the PTA. They hated me. No. I tried to be the Girl Scout troop leader. I was the organizer of the entire community in this old neighborhood. I tried to run a small troop in that neighborhood, and they all hated me. It was a disaster. It was a total disaster. So I had to take a really hard look at myself in the mirror. I was 40 years old, and chronic pain, stopped driving. I had actually started ablating my nerves. So I was having my nerves severed every 6 months to relieve pain. And my defining moment was I was in a pain clinic. And what would happen was I would have my nerve severed, and the side effect of that was muscle spasm. So you'd have these really intense muscle spasms. So I'd go and they'd hook me up with the electrodes, right, and all of that. And I was laying there looking around at these people who were really like on their way out. And here I was going, I don't belong here. I don't belong here. So synchronistically enough, right, in the midst of all of that really difficult time, I found myself being exposed in this new neighborhood to Eastern philosophy, something I'd never considered. I grew up Catholic, Italian, right, mainstream, never considered meditation or holistic practice or anything like that. And meditation was something that I was exposed to, started reading about, and started to do it very religiously, not because I wanted any spiritual result, but because I wanted to heal my pain. And I had read that meditation could help me disconnect from my pain. So with that A-type personality, I scheduled my meditations morning, afternoon, evening, and religiously went to meditation, especially if I was feeling stressed, because the stress of this move, not having the relationships, the support, it was really weighing on me to the point where my pain levels were increasing. So all of this journey launched for me in one event, and that event happened Christmas 2010. Now, mind you, I had been meditating quite religiously for the past year by the time this happened, and was starting to hear things, like during meditation, I would hear little things, and I think, wow, my mind is really making stuff up. This is crazy. I am a terrible meditator. I need to do something differently, right? But I started to notice some weird things happening outside of my meditations too, where I'd be in the grocery store, right? I'd run into somebody and we'd be just having this regular conversation about something very mundane. And I would hear something in that conversation very personal. And it was really strange, like it wouldn't fit into the conversation. And I would get into the car and I'd scratch my head and think, wow, did that person really say that to me? Because I don't even know them well enough for them to have said something that personal to me. And I don't think I responded to it. I didn't even respond. And how rude is that? And then I noticed this pattern where this was happening to me a lot, and I started to think I was a really poor listener. So what happened to me was Christmas 2010, I had this amazing connection that I was not at all expecting. It was a day in which I was hosting a party at my house, holiday party. I was the oldest. I am the oldest, I should say. Everyone comes to my house for Christmas. And I was preparing a beef tenderloin that day. I don't eat meat anymore, but it was something that I did then. And I needed some very key ingredients for this recipe. There was a beef tenderloin, a spice, and a red wine that I wanted to use to marinate. Went to the pantry that morning, opened it up, searched around, and realized I had forgotten to purchase these very key ingredients. Christmas morning, the grocery store's not open. So I'm thinking, all right, I can mock this thing up. And got on a stool, started pushing things around, didn't find anything remotely close to what I needed. Actually called the local Speedway gas station. I totally remember this. Calling the local gas station going, hey, do you have anything on yourself? And of course they didn't. So my practice at that time was straight to meditation. If I had stress in my life, this was a very stressful event because I had about 15, 20 people coming for a dinner that I couldn't prepare. So I told the kids, hey, Mom needs a couple minutes. I went into the bedroom, shut the door, went into a very deep meditation that day, heard 3 words that forever changed my life in a very deep male voice, as if in the room with me. And those words were, I am Jacob. And it shook me. It was so loud. I opened my eyes to look around, and of course there's no one there. And I tried to communicate back that day with Jacob, but I never got any response. But I was so blissfully peaceful and felt this love come over me. I had no fear at all. And all I thought was, wow, this is ridiculous. I was so stressed over this meal. I can salt and pepper this thing. It's Christmas. And I opened my bedroom door, walked out to the pantry, and there on the shelf in a very neat row in 3 sealed containers right at eye level were the 3 ingredients that I needed for the tenderloin. And I had been studying or dipping my toe into studying law of attraction at that time, and I thought, wow, I manifested something into my physical reality. Jacob heard me. I didn't know. I didn't care. I just made the meal, had a beautiful day with family. And after that, I just pushed it out of my mind and decided not to think about it for a while. And beyond that, started to become very closet curious about what was going on with me. What was I hearing? Who was this Jacob? And started to question. I just got very, very intentional. I started reading about it. I started listening to audiobooks about it. But most important, I started channeling. I really just connected in meditation and was intentional in asking a question. And I asked Jacob, who are you? Why are you coming? Why are you speaking to me? And he gave me this beautiful answer that I did not at all expect. He told me that he was a past life connection of mine, and that in a past life he was a young boy and he was lost, and I took him in. I clothed him, I fed him, I cared for him in that life. And he comes back indebted to me in this life to help me find my path, which was always to channel and be here on the planet as a channel. And I heard a lot during that time, channeling for myself in that closet, about exactly what I was supposed to do, what my mission was, what my purpose was. And I said, wow, that sounds really great, but that's not at all what I'm here to do. That's not at all what I plan to do with my life. I wasn't comfortable with it. But what happened was I was raising my vibration so much through these connections that it was almost like my outer world started to assemble itself completely differently. And I truly believe this is what happens. We have timelines that we've already created that when we vibrate with them and we get on them, our entire world changes. And mine completely did. So I did heal myself of chronic pain. I can't say that I found this miraculous recovery, program. I finally had a diagnosis. I have an abnormality in my hip joint. Don't know how long it's been there. It may have been there from birth. It may have been childbirth that caused it. There's nothing that can fix it. It's always going to be there. But I just happened upon the right practitioner who had the right expertise, who I started working with and sent me to the next person, who sent me to a book, who sent me to a nutritionist. And all of a sudden I turned around, and about a year and a half later, I was 100% pain-free, in the best health that I've been probably in my entire life. Beyond that, I believe I was led to exactly the right people that were here to support what I'm here to do in the world, because I didn't have people in my life that were mirroring this to me, and I needed them, like Ethan in the Flower of Life, and a variety of different, Barb connections, friends that I made. And they were the ones that brought it out of me bigger, said, you really need to listen to what you're channeling. And when I finally started to listen to what was coming through me, I thought, wow, who am I not to live this? How amazing is this that I can do this and live this? And it was quite a journey from there to transition my life from where I was and what I was doing to who I am today. And believe me, my family, they were probably the most difficult ones that I had to explain this to, and today they still don't really get it. And I mean, I'm okay with that. They still love me. I still have connections with them, but I have a brand new family, and my family has grown, and I'm so grateful because the people that I connect with through this work, I mean, every day, I have clients that come to me that are doing amazing things in the world. I mean, amazing gifts. And so I'm very blessed. And I truly believe that we all have this ability. And there are times in our lives when our bodies speak to us, when we're drawn to various people, places, situations that are meant to be that knock on the door that is going to bring this to the surface. And we are in a collective time right now on the planet where this is going on really big. So any questions I can answer about channeling or any of that? Okay. Yes?
A friend of mine was going to come with me, but she decided not to. But mainly because she was busy. But one of the reasons was that, I'm really not sure what they're channeling. Could be negative stuff. Could be
right.
Well, you gotta have an open mind. So I'm not sure either, but yes. I'm interested.
Yeah. So how is it that we know we're not channeling negative entities? Right. Good question. So when I first started doing this, I was just feeling my way through it. I didn't even know what channeling was. But there were times when I was so open at the beginning, I'd be sitting at my laptop, zoning out on something I was working on, and all of a sudden I'd be talking to somebody, a being, a soul would come in. And I could tell right away by the feeling in my body or the type of conversation that being wanted to have, whether or not this was something or somebody that I wanted to connect with. And I used that discernment very early on, and nobody taught that to me, but I just said no. I just had this, it was almost like a stance, an energetic stance of no. I don't have time for you. I don't want to talk to you today. And that's how I learned to do it. Now, a lot of people go through classes and teachings and things, and they set up protection. I have some very specific feelings about protection because I did take a class, actually, after I had been channeling for a very long time. I thought, wow, I need to really understand what I'm doing. So I took a class. And the class was good in that I learned to open my mind to the variety of beings I could connect with. Yet at the same time, there was a lot of teaching about protection. The whole white candles and the crystals and all these things that we put outside of ourselves for protection. And I think those things are good. I think they have a place. But I think the only reason that they protect you is because you believe so much that they protect you. But when you're setting that stuff up, the only reason you're setting it up is because you believe that that negative entity already exists and the potential to match them is already there. So it's almost like when you're setting up protection, you're acknowledging there's something to protect yourself from. And at that point, you really opened yourself up to allowing that being, that entity in. So I feel living in a higher vibrational way is always going to bring in the most appropriate guides, beings, teachers, masters that you need. And that's all areas of your life. It can't just be, I light the white candle at times when I want to talk to my spirit guides. It's the food that you eat. It's the music that you listen to. It's the people that you choose to surround yourself with, because we're a consciousness, right? And when we channel, a consciousness is coming in and that message is flowing through me. So there's a vibratory match, right? So if I'm not saying it's bad to drink alcohol. I like to have a nice glass of wine with dinner every now and then, but I certainly don't drink anymore. Not the way I used to, right? Because the more I've raised my vibration, the more there's a vibratory match to other things in my life that are different, right? That just continues that vibration raising, right? Not like my life is perfect. I go through times at the soul level, I think we have to, where we have these experiences that are negative. And our vibratory energy is equal to our emotions. So I used to think if I'm having a bad day, I can't channel. If I'm sad, if I'm angry, if I'm depressed, I better not channel, or if I'm sick. But what I've come to realize, it's all about your intention. And when I'm in those types of vibrations, channeling will absolutely turn me around. So I hope that answered your question. But yeah, I think that, and we all have times that we're going to be more open and we're going to be connecting to beings that are stepping through. I mean, I've had interactions with souls that are crossing over. I've done some soul rescues. I've had some very not pleasant experiences with those beings. But what I've come to find out is they're usually just getting our attention, because there's something they need. Souls that are stuck here, they need help transitioning. And they often come to us and make a big stink because they don't know how else to get the attention of the people they need to help and support them. So any negative experience I've had with a soul that's crossing over, when I really tuned into why that soul was creating that noise or that disturbance in my house, it was because they were confused, they were lost, they needed support or help in some way. So what we're going to be doing, and I didn't talk about this, we're going to be doing a live channeling here in a little bit. And what I'll be doing is bringing in guides, teachers, masters that are best suited for everyone who's here and beyond, because I filmed today, and this goes up on YouTube. And we'll bring in a general message about what's happening on the planet, what we need to know most now. And then I take Q&A. So I'll pass out cards and you can write down questions. Ethan will ask the questions so that they are on the camera and we can hear them. And the guides that are most appropriate will come in and answer those questions. Okay, but it's also a vibratory exchange. When these beings and guides are bringing messages through me, it's not just about the words. You are interacting with a vibration that's going to change you, right? It can be healing. It can bring us to more information that we need. There's a variety of different ways. We're all unique. We're going to respond to that vibratory energy. Any other questions? Yeah.
So I'm attending something like this first time.
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay for me to be here first time? I'm completely open, but I don't know anything about it.
Okay, well, I believe that if you're here, you're meant to be here. Yes, and absolutely, it's okay. So as far as channeling, just so you know, what I'll be doing when I channel is I'll be doing trance channeling. So I can be a conscious channel and I can be a trance channel. What that means is I can connect to guides and beings and speak just like I'm speaking to you and have a connection where the most appropriate messages are flowing through me to you. When I'm doing the channeling that I'll be doing in a little bit, I'll be going into a trance state. And what that means is I'm meditating into a vibration that my consciousness is kind of outside of myself. And I I equate it to being the observer of the situation. So I'm listening, I'm hearing what's going on, I'm often questioning. It's kind of funny, like sometimes I go, oh my gosh, this is going nowhere, or they can't possibly be getting this. Or if Ethan will ask a question, I'll think, how are we going to answer that? You know, I get like really, but I mean, I never have to worry about it because it just flows through me. And I listen back to the recording. I'm always amazed at what comes through. So yeah, I say just, be an observer, and to the degree that you're comfortable, and enjoy. Let me know if you have any questions. All right, so I always like to talk a little bit about, from my perspective, what's happening on the planet right now, because I feel like that's why I'm here. What I was told early on is that I'm here to help support light workers through a very difficult transition on our planet. I didn't know what that meant until recently, because we see it now, don't we? This whole karmic situation collectively that we have to deal with that's coming up. And so we've been walking a really interesting timeline, even going back to 2016. We had a lot of intense solar energies. Those solar energies came to activate our DNA. Our DNA holds information. I believe that we have 12 strands of DNA that are equal to 12 established dimensions that are in this universe. We have a physical manifestation of that DNA, which is a carbon base, which holds our earthly experience. And we have a crystalline double of that DNA strand that holds our galactic experience. And there's a lot of information there. So what we're doing right now is we're activating our DNA to bring those strands together, which is why we are now awakening more and more to our gifts, and especially communication. I think that's going to be a huge theme for what we're walking into with some of my channeled messages, as well as what we're all experiencing here on the planet as disclosure, which is a huge popular topic right now. So, disclosure on our planet, a lot of people interpret that as the government finally coming out with, what they've been covering up from us, and, that all of these beings truly do exist. And the collectives that I work with actually look at it differently. They say that disclosure is happening from within. That the more that we activate our DNA, the more we are connecting with our galactic family. And that's how this is going to happen. We're not going to wake up one day and the government allowed us to receive all this information, so these beings are going to just all come land and start walking down the street. They're already here. They all exist in this space that we're in. These 12 dimensions that are equal to those 12 strands of DNA, they all exist in this moment and in this room. You're only tuning into a small fragment of that energy right now, to what your consciousness will allow. And that's why when we meditate, what we're actually doing is we're activating the light body. So I believe we have a physical body, which we manifest, and we have a light body. When we are ascending, our physical body and our light body is becoming it's like the time-space reality between those two bodies is becoming shorter. Because when we meditate, we allow that light body to travel. This happens in our sleep. I've been hearing this so much from people. Dream state is so active right now. For me, it's been too. I don't know how many of you, but I've been waking up with profound experiences in my dream state. Just messages and beings and interactions. It's amazing. And that's the result of what's happened here recently, which is the planetary energies have now come to a higher resonance, Hertz frequency than ever before. And that's what we went through in 2016. It was like the rumblings of Mother Earth coming to this new platform. And it kind of created some chaos in our lives. A lot of us had to let go of things, rearrange things, change things. And now what I've heard recently, well, let's kind of go back to November. What the guys are saying was back in November, that Hertz frequency was going to level off about mid-November. Because it's kind of like when we're tuning something, we go a little bit up and then a little bit down till we get it exactly the way we want it. And that's what was going on with Mother Gaia. She was raising her frequency and it was kind of unstable. And a lot of us felt that in the physical body. There was a lot of physical body challenges. But now it's leveled off. And it's kind of like when those brakes go on, all of a sudden you're in this really still place and everything stops. And that's where we've been. So I've noticed my clients in the last 2 months have been coming to me going, nothing's moving. Everything's really stagnant. It's just weird. Everything's stopped. And I can't get it to move right now. And so the guides have been calling this a collective transition or a timeline integration. So when we raise our frequency of the earth, our energy bodies have to catch up because we aren't used to that. You know, we were like bouncing all over the place. We're used to a lower frequency and now she's staying stable. And we're like, okay, now our energy bodies can catch up to where she's at. That's all we've been doing. We've just been catching up to that new resonance. So now we're going into the solar eclipse this weekend, which is very significant because that is really the lunar energies. We know we have these intense, I'm getting ahead of myself. The lunar energies were really intense. That brought up a lot of karma. You know, we're moving into a more collective focus. So karma had to come up for us singularly in expansion because we really had to get rid of that so we can now focus on what's going on the planet. Okay? So the solar eclipse comes to activate us to move forward with a lot of new decisions in our lives. And that's another common theme that my clients have been coming with is, I got to make this really heavy decision, you know, or it's several decisions and they're big, you know, and they're stuck on the decision making because they're afraid. They don't want to be right or, you know, they don't want to be wrong. They don't know what's right, what's wrong. You know, if I make this decision, is it going to be wrong? You know, what's going to happen on the other side? And they're projecting into the future about all the bad things that are happening on the other side of this proposed decision. So what I've seen is that this is a really incredible opportunity for us to embrace this new collective energy we're stepping into. Because what we think when we're making a decision, it's so singular and it's so focused on like if it's me and that other person or me and the job or whatever it might be, we've been so tuned into that physical reality. We need to start thinking bigger, right? So the decision itself is the tuner. Decisions are not that important. That's what they say. Like, you're like, that can't be true. Decisions, we're just tuning our energy. That's all we're doing. When we make a decision, we're tuning something to a new experience. It's the experience on the other side of that decision and how we go through that matters. And you cannot get it wrong. That's the message that's coming through. Because your source energy. Source energy is always reflected back to itself, right? And when we serve ourselves, when we really anchor in those truest desires of who we are and what we came to be, that is source energy. So if we make that decision from that standpoint, source energy is always going to reflect itself back to us in the exact experience that we need. So if you make a decision that takes you away from source energy, you're going to have another opportunity to make that decision again, right? And that's going to be the way that your path unfolds. And this is where we are. So besides that, it's the microcosm of the macrocosm. Because look at everything that's going on the planet right now. A lot of stuff we don't like, right? We can choose the physical route. We can get involved in, you know, let's say like the protests and all of that stuff. I'm not saying it's bad to protest if you're so called to do that. But what the guides are saying is it's equal to having something come up in the physical body. Like this has been a theme lately too. A lot of people have been revisiting things in the physical body. Why? Because we address them in the physical world. And there's two sides to every experience. There's physical and there's non-physical. So if you didn't address the non-physical information that had to go along with that pain, disease, whatever it was, you didn't heal it. And time goes like a spiral. We come back to these things again to revisit them through a new perspective. So if you choose to protest, that's a very physical action. If you're going to do it, make sure your non-physical energy is aligned in the right way in order to truly make a vibrational difference here. That's all I'm saying, because we're really moving through a spiral of time right now where history is repeating itself. How much of that have we seen? We're on the spiral in a new dimension, in a new timeline, and we're looking at it differently. So we have to consider both sides of that. And we are connected to all things. Our structure, it is not singular. It is interconnected and quantumly entangled with everything and everybody. And everyone thinks, wow, that's a huge responsibility. And it is. But if you are serving yourself, you're always going to serve that quantum entanglement. And I know that sounds really selfish, and I talk about this a lot. You know, people think, oh, service to self. I'm here as a light worker. I'm supposed to serve others. Yes, you are. But you can't do it unless you're doing it from the right energy, which is service to self. All of that, those collective agreements, assignments that you made them because you wanted to come here onto this earth plane and experience so much excitement and joy, right? And if you're not feeling that, you're not connected to what that is, right? So now's the time to really put yourself first. Make the decisions you need to make. Try not to get vibrationally tied up in what the outcome might be in a negative way, but understand that you're just tuning your experience right now. And that on the other side of that decision, there are infinite potentials. Just like in this spiral we're on the planet, there are infinite potentials. We just want to match the ones that are equal to who we have become. Right? All right. Any questions? And then I'm going to start channeling. Although that was already a little dose, we'll say. Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment. I was thinking about the spiral. Mm-hmm. I was really an activist in the 70s, you know. Mm-hmm. I mean, I lived in D.C., even the 80s, you know. Many times, whether I drove or flew or took a bus, you know, to protest things like, you know, right to choose, protect violence against women, and a lot of other things. I mean, I'm really feeling strongly about that, and it feels like we're in the spiral. Yeah. And it's coming back to that. I mean, you know, for me, I'm passing the torch on to the younger generation, which, you know, I see that they're stepping up.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know, but it's just interesting because I'm seeing that spiral come around in clothing and attitudes and the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to make that as a comment. And I mean, you know, I felt good about doing it. I was doing it for myself, but I was doing it for others too.
Right.
And I'm supporting them, you know, through myself. I'm still supporting, you know, the activism that's continuing to go.
I think that, I mean, I'm not trying to say that those physical actions don't make a difference. I think they do. I mean, we were in a really physical dimension. So those things obviously had a huge effect on where our planet is today. But now we're in a different place where we have to, you know, that's the only reason this stuff's coming back around. It's like now we have to look at it differently because we have the tools, you know, we have the tools. Ethan's passing out cards for questions. Don't get caught up on the language of the channeling. If you're new to the experience, some of the verbiage, the terms might be a little outside of what you've experienced before. If so, just sit with the energy because you're always going to get exactly what you need. All right? And you can ask any question you want. It can be personal if you wish. We will always rephrase them, though, because we want everyone to be served by the answer. So if you ask a personal question, the guides will probably come in and rearrange the answer so that everyone takes something away. Okay? Usually your personal questions are divinely timed and perfect for what we're talking about. And I twitch and move a little bit when I channel, for those of you who are new. It's just the difference in energy between the dimension that we're in here and the dimension of the beings that I'm working with actually exist in. We are pleased to begin, and we are the Council of Light. As we have allowed this transmission to take place, we are very pleased that all of you are also allowing your vibration to be intermixed, because as we know, we are creating a collective space in which this transmission takes a meaning. It is not just coming through us as something that must be advised or heard by you. It is intermixing with your intention for how the collective human race must change and rebirth elements of itself. But we come to remind you in this moment before we begin of your divine perfection, because oftentimes when you are looking at your planetary being and all of the things that are taking place, the transitions that are taking place, you feel as if there is imperfection here. And you are always very much focused on that imperfection and that disharmony. And we come to remind you that you as a sovereign being, you as a source energy conduit, have the ability in any moment to experience peace, to experience love. And that the divine perfection that you so desire is already existing within your field of potential. That divine perfection is not only a part of what you've come to experience, it is a part of you. You bring it to the planet, you see. That is why you so desired to manifest in physical form in this time. That divine perfection is something that you came to create. It is beyond what you came to experience. It is something that you chose to leave behind for others to also experience. And we are pleased to begin with a very important message we want to bring through about the planetary energies and the way in which many of you are reacting to what is taking place within your field of energy. There are many key elements of your planetary space that are transitioning beyond the frequency or the resonance that Mother Earth has brought herself to. You see, the shift in frequency or the raise in frequency of Mother Earth was actually the catalyst for many other triggering events that would assist you and support the ascension timeline that you are on. This is what we wish to speak of today, is these events that are either already taking place or culminating within the timeline collectively that you are all entangled with. We want to speak to what that timeline is because it is difficult in singularity for many of you to experience the same truth. And we know it is difficult for you to perceive this because many of you are attuned to watching your news programs and receiving information about what is taking place on your planet from many sources that come through perhaps the internet or sources that you read or you pertain to when you want to understand what is taking place globally. But even though the same human being could come to an announcement of what is happening on the planet, they are all going to perceive that announcement differently through their vibration. And we'll give you an example. Let us say your government has made a decision, and that decision is presented in one of your news media outlets. And that decision may be a new law, perhaps, that is being put into place. And as you know, there are differing opinions on your planet about law and which laws are needed and which laws are not needed. So as you come to that announcement of that new law, vibrationally, you are going to interpret it through judgments, through your ego, through your perception of right and wrong, and through your vibrational stance, which is equal to the emotional response you have to this decision. If that is the case, every unique being is going to interpret that decision quite differently. Yet you are all quantumly entangled in a collective timeline. And that timeline in itself has and holds a dimension. That dimension is always going to be equal to the neutral state of all beings coming together as a one. So if you think about measurement, and let us say that some of you who come to that announcement of the law have a very higher vibrational interaction. You feel it's very pleasing and it is going to do the planet very, very much positive in its response. And then there is a group or a collective that has a very lower vibrational interaction with that law or that decision. There is a fear vibration, perhaps, or there is anger, and they feel as if it is not fair that that law was signed. There's also another group of beings who do not interact with that decision at all. Perhaps they know of it, but it does not affect their reality one way or another, or perhaps there are some that are not even tuned in to that set of criteria, that information. But yet all of those beings exist on the same timeline. Your perception is allowing you to see the world as a collective unit, the way in which you so desire. And we know this is a very conflicting statement to what many of you believe. Many of you so solidly believe that there is a stagnant collective energy that is being physically manifested and manipulated. And we agree that your collective reality in many aspects has been manipulated through consciousness. But consciousness is quite different than physicality. So if you are always perceiving uniquely the collective experience than another, how is it that you are not creators? And how is it that you are not in some way affecting your collective experience? This is what we wish for human beings to especially understand, because many of them are seeing karmic timelines being played out right now within the collective consciousness. Now, those karmic timelines are announcements just like the signing of this law. Everyone that comes to the experience of that karmic timeline is going to have a different interpretation of it through their own energy body. So how is it that we can have a stagnant collective experience that is holding your singular structure back? If you are in charge or in control, we'll use the word control, of the way that you interpret your collective experience, could you not interpret it differently to enable you to find peace, to find joy, to find happiness in your own experience? You see, many of you are using the collective experience as the lead-in to what you must create. So the collective experience offers me this. And this is what I must use as my platform to create through. And there are many roadblocks there that I have to work around. Or there are many guidelines or rules to how I can interact within that space. But if that space is actually interpreted differently by someone else, could it not also be interpreted differently by you? What we're getting at here is the holographic nature of the way that you are entangled in your quantum experience. When we speak of holographic, we're truly speaking of your sovereignty and your free will to be able to choose the collective experience that you wish to invite in and create through as that platform. And many of you feel as if that would be negating reality. Well, we must acknowledge reality because reality is. And if I close my eyes or my mind and turn my back from the negative things that are taking place on the planet, isn't that doing a disservice or an injustice to humanity? And we would say that the reason that humanity is in the state that it is in is that the injustice is that that is the only reality you tune into. Because the supportive energy that you need as creators is available here for you. The support, the resources. Yes, we know that those experiences are taking place. Reality in itself is not stagnant. It is always changing. And that through the earth experience and physicality, there is always going to be the dichotomy of right or wrong, yin or yang, light or dark. You choose the degree to which you operate within those yin and yang vibrations. So can we have dark in our lives? And can that dark be an energy that we are here to understand for our own evolution and use in order to expand as source energy the experience we came to serve? And we would say yes. So let's give an example here for that. There's a negative experience taking place on your planet, and you choose to tune into that negative experience. It is okay to acknowledge that, and it is, of course, human nature to feel empathically what perhaps the other beings that are experiencing that are going through. But the problem is that many of you stay there in that vibration, in that experience. Timelines don't have a beginning and an end. They are consciousness working through and of itself in a field of unlimited potential. So if you see an experience that takes place that is negative and you choose to stay there, all you are doing is keeping it alive. And this is what we see is taking place as that timeline spiral that you have been discussing. Experience is coming back to itself, and it is not ascending because you are staying in the vibration of it far too long. You were meant to understand your emotions as the catalyst for creation. So you see something negative that takes place on your planet, you feel into the vibration of what those other beings must be going through in that moment, and you use that emotion as the inspiration for anchoring through your creative will a new manifestation. And that can be in your own life. Because we know what is taking place on your planet as a global interaction or transition is something that is so big that many of you feel out of control. But we're here today to put the control back into your hands. Because when you realize that control is truly your life, your energy, your creation, you will forever have an impact on all of those negative experiences. So the more that you flourish here, the more that you bring experiences through you and create them for your highest good, they will forever be quantumly entangled in that experience. And then when you come to those similar mass media stories about what's taking place on the planet, your reaction is actually going to make a difference. Because remember that timeline we talked about, where everyone comes together in neutrality and there's a dimension that is held. You now bring more to what you're experiencing. Because the way that you interpret that is going to be through eyes that have now seen as source. And that is what we ask you all to bring to your human experience. The compassion that you feel for the beings that are suffering on your planet right now is equal to the compassion you should feel for yourself. Because those beings will be served when you are able to reach the point that your creative energy flows as source. Imagine for a moment if all beings were to interact this way. We're going to address one more issue, and we are going to then take questions. Beyond this analogy of collective energy, we want to say that as you move into this next solar interaction, you've already been building up to what we would call a new platform of communication. There's an interstellar and intergalactic transmission that is taking place right now. It is attuning many of you at the level of the DNA to receive communication in a higher vibrational way. The portals of the planet are now open simultaneously through mid-March, And those vibratory portals are attuning the chakras of Mother Earth. She is a living, breathing being. And there are chakras outside of your physical body that connect to her that are being activated. So as you're going through this transition, you may feel some energy that is difficult in the physical body. Some of you have been experiencing this, especially in the crown chakra, as headaches, as nausea, as dizziness. Some of you may have been tuning into the very high-pitched frequencies of these beings that are entering your space. And all this is an adjustment of the way in which your structure is now allowing itself to better interconnect with your galactic families. They are all here in support. They always have been. But you as physical beings need a more literal translation of information, and that is what this lead through has been all about. The solar energies, bringing up that karma and making the room, clearing the space to receive more. And now going into this solar interaction, what we see taking place is many cooperative efforts between higher dimensional beings and earth beings. And those cooperative efforts are going to bring in new technologies. Those technologies are going to be service to self-oriented. They must be. Remember, when beings are collectively connected, they are operating in a love frequency telepathically in order to exchange information and travel. You as a structure allow your light body to travel in a very similar way through a frequency of love. And this is the attunement that is taking place. Many of you may experience this as the higher vibrational Kundalini energies accessing your structure, especially over the course of the next several weeks. Take advantage of this time. It is a higher vibrational connection, not only to your galactic families, but also to your higher self. And allow that perspective to open to the way that these beings may present themselves to you. It is not always in sight or in the message that you hear. It can often be in synchronicity. And this is where we see much of the cooperative effort beginning. We're very pleased to take questions.
You spoke of making decisions. Could you elaborate on all actions being right action in the moment? Many people fret on decision making.
Yes, I actually am connecting with the Pleiadians, and they're pleased to step in and answer this question. Let us discuss for a moment right and wrong, because when you are looking at a decision, all a decision is that your energy vibrationally has come to a point in your life where things are not matching your frequency. When you must make a decision, or there's a path that's opening up as to a left or a right, let us say, acknowledge the fact that you have undergone such an incredible transition in your life that an opportunity presented itself to you, and that something, someone, some experience that was a part of you now no longer vibrates with who you are. So when that decision presents itself, you're often filtering the decision through the ego. Now, the ego in itself is not a bad tool. You are given the ego. It is a reptilian energy that is connected to the mind body. So in other words, the thoughts with the physical manifestations. Your ego is meant to help you to understand who you are and who you have become in order to reflect into the collective consciousness. But you see, many of you are using the ego as a tool to reflect through the collective consciousness who you must be. And when you begin to do this, you put all of the people, all of the circumstances before yourself, and you project into potential outcomes. We often like to also bring responsibility and the concept of responsibility into this conversation. because many of you feel responsible when you are making decisions, especially as parents or as spouses. You feel responsible for others. You feel responsible for your collective humanity. But responsibility in itself is something that's also been taken out of context. You see, you came with the notion that through source energy, you were going to be expanding God. That God expansion was never meant to be filtered as something that was a responsibility. It just is. It is the responsibility that you hold as God coming through yourself to interact with all things. So when you are making a decision, it matters not about what is right and what is wrong. That is only a projection and a creation of timelines, because by the time you have gotten to the energy of right, you've already decided what that decision would look like on the other side. It is the same if you have gotten to wrong. If you believe that the decision might be wrong, you're already projecting into the future of what a timeline would look like on the other side of that decision. So now you've got two potentials running because you are a creator. It becomes what you wish to match. So the decision itself doesn't make the experience. The decision itself moves your energy in a direction it was already meant to go. On the other side is the experience, and that vibrational experience is always going to be a match to your truth. But you have to uphold that truth, you see. So when you have the responsibility of caring for others and you're not placing yourself first, often you think that is a selfish act. But what we would say is, if you are not putting yourself first, you're not honoring those relationships or those interactions. Because the only responsibility you came with as source energy was to reflect yourself in expansion through others. So you have to serve yourself through those decisions. And on the other side, there's going to be an experience. Sometimes that experience may not be pleasing to you, and that is what you call wrong. And you see, there's a big difference between what is pleasing to you and what is wrong. The energy of a decision is going to give you an experience of the soul. You can always maneuver through those experiences remembering source energy. There are things that are going to be uncomfortable. There are decisions that you'll make that will be difficult. But if you always remember that you're operating from that collective space of love, whatever happens on the other side is going to be a vibratory match at the soul level to what you need here. And if it is uncomfortable, so be it. There are many tools at your disposal to walk through discomfort and disharmony. But what we have seen is that in physical form, discomfort and disharmony is always leading you back home. And that home is always changing. Remember the message that was brought in about the way you've raised your vibration. You are now new vibrational beings in this moment. So that platform that you arrived on here, it's always going to be vibrationally modifying to what your soul is calling for and what you have intentionally asked for. Some of you may not realize you're asking at the subconscious level, but you are. There's always a calling from your source energy field into the potential of creation. And we honor that in you. So don't worry so much about the decision. The right or wrong in itself is only your projection into the future timeline. And those future timelines are only there as potentials that you can match through your frequency. So if you're going to consider right or wrong, try to vibrate into the right. If you're getting very stuck on making a decision because of the experience on the other side, then place yourself in the awareness of what that right feels like. Because if you truly are creators and that source energy field of potential is working through you, why not imagine the right? Because that will lead you into a situation where your vibration will match what that right looks like. And it may not look exactly the way that you perceived it, but it certainly will be a vibratory match as a magnetic being.
By raising vibration, does one's destiny change?
Yes, let's talk about this. The Pleiadians step in. Let us talk about destiny. Many of you perceive destiny as something that you came with, that you are here and organizing in the moment. There are people that you are meant to meet with at certain times and experiences you are meant to have in certain times as well. And what we consider is that you come with a record. That record is vibrational. So the people, the places, and the things are created through you. We know this is quite different than the way you perceive. You believe there is the right person that is out there, and that right person is someone that you are going to cross paths with at exactly the right time. But what you forget is that that person on the other side of you is source energy reflecting itself back to you. So you are actually creating that person. And vibrationally, you are going to align with ascension codes. This is intentional as well as a part of your birth record to emit a specific vibration. Many of you are familiar with this as astrological influences. You chose a birth date for a reason. That birth date came with a very extensive quantum alignment of energies that goes beyond this planet. And when those planets trigger your record, there is a vibrational response. So during those times, you consider destiny or fate perhaps to be an interaction with another that is very positive, or maybe it is a karmic experience that feels very negative. But regardless, it is source energy reflecting itself back to you as something that you are meant to use as your expansive tool of awareness. So can you change that record? Can you change that density? We would say there are varying degrees of the way that density plays out as a part of your record. When we talk about density, it is the thick material that you create as a response to your experience. So if you have a record and there is a planetary alignment that allows you to interact with someone, you often judge that through the ego as good or bad. And that is how you create density around the experience. The degree to which you vibrate in alignment with that experience is equal to the way that you're able to change it. So let's say there's a karmic experience that takes place and it feels very negative. If you equal that negative experience and you choose to suffer through it, you choose to perhaps announce it, complain about it, feel as if it is leading you through life as opposed to you leading it, that is one manifestation of the way that your record plays out, or your destiny, as you call it. Many have the ability to traverse very difficult experiences from a higher vibrational standpoint. And that is also rearranging their experience or their destiny, if you so call it. So to make it quite simple, there is a structure that connects to what we call your vibrational record. There are many factors that influence that record, planetarily as well as at the soul level. But you have a degree of experience that is coinciding with what results of that record. And it is through your free will that you get to choose how to interact with those experiences to change them more to either your liking or to an opportunity to expand your consciousness.
What is karma, and do we all have it?
Yes, the Pleiadians are still here to answer that question. Karma in itself is a dense vibration that is equal to something that you have decided you wish to understand better. So when you come with karma, the karma itself is not an experience. We just spoke of the record. You come with a vibrational record. Within that record, there is a degree of karma that you chose as an earthbound soul being to hold within that record. And the reason for that karma is that there is a review process. And we're speaking now especially in definition of the human experience, because other dimensions, other races, work differently with universal law. The human consciousness works in this way. You have come into this human body as a soul with a desire to expand as source energy. But before you came, there was a collective decision made. And there was a review process, perhaps of many of your earthly lives. And in that review process, you understood that in order to expand this source consciousness within you, there were things that needed to be experienced or revisited that would help you to have the experience you needed in order to achieve what you came to achieve. So karma in itself is often looked at as a negative energy. It can be a negative energy through your own interpretation. But that karmic experience in itself is coming up as a very similar analogy to the spiral of time that we spoke of earlier, where you're revisiting aspects of your, we'll say, quote unquote past, not linear past, of course, but your parallel past, to be able to transcend and grow your consciousness. Now, density, as we spoke of a moment ago, is actually something that we perceive as the heavy-weighted material that often surrounds karmic experiences. Density is what you create for yourself. So many believe that if you do something wrong in this life, there is a judgment. And at the point of that judgment, there is a karmic attachment that you must receive something that is equal to what you have done. This is one way to look at density, you see, because density is solely created by and through you. It can be an emotional response, or it can be a physical action or interaction. Density in itself is something that you carry with you from life to life if it is not cleared. And that density is something that can be worked on, especially at the soul level, through your ascension timeline. And karmic experiences are often the precursor to those dense energies forming, because you have an experience you perceive as negative, and you go through that experience in a very difficult way. Or perhaps you don't allow yourself to connect to source energy in a way that you experience the connection of the other through love. So there are decisions that you make that are not equal to love. And through those decisions, you are gathering more density. When we look at karma as a whole on your planet, we would say the Mother Earth being also holds similar karma, because she has a record as well. She also revolves around the planetary energies, and she also has a birth date. She's also chosen in this experience to evolve herself as source energy, very similar to you. So your Earth consciousness has a similar record, but together as a collective, you also create density. And we see this is what is taking place on your planet right now. There are many karmic experiences coming up to be cleared and to be revisited through a new perspective. Yet at the same time, there are many who are unconsciously creating density around these karmic experiences. And that density is what we see is causing most of the problem.
I feel like I'm meant to do more, but when trying to implement my big ideas, I feel a deflating loss of energy. It feels overwhelming to own the business or make the invention. Am I doing it wrong? And should I wait for it to come to me?
Okay, I actually get Mary Magdalene stepping in to assist us with this question, so I'm very pleased and honored to bring her into this transmission. And what we wish to say as a master collective is that many of you are still very anchored in your physical experience, to the degree that you are relying on physicality and the mind to create, as opposed to what your energy now knows as the basis for creation. When there is frustration, first, we will say, frustration as an emotion is showing you the equilibrium of stagnant energy that you are within. Because frustration in itself is always a manifestation through your consciousness of where you are not moving vibrationally. So when you are making physical action, and those physical actions are not paying off, we'll call it, in your interpretation, that often means that those physical actions aren't aligned with your energy. And oftentimes what we also perceive is that physical beings become very caught up in a lack vibration. You have been taught that it takes physical action and that there must be something that is always being done in order to receive. It is work for resources, yes? And that program in itself is something that holds many of you back. If you would begin to allow yourself to let go of the way that you have interpreted work, the way you have interpreted achievement, because moving into this new collective space that you have all now opened, the manifestation of resources can come quite quickly when you are very tuned in to your soul. And it doesn't require a certain amount of hours or work or thinking or planning in order to do this. So we like to give advice to those who are having very similar experiences. When your physical reality is not producing the results that you so wish for it to produce, what that means is the path that you're going down is often not equal to your non-physical desires in this life. So we always go back to the self, and we say that exploring the self from a spiritual standpoint will always bring you to the right decisions in the right times. We know that many of you are focused on finance and currency, as it is a requirement of the way that you must sustain much of your living here. The degree to which you accept the way your monetary structure is supporting you is the degree to which it is going to change within your collective reality. In other words, we wish for all beings to really consider the amount or the degree of monetary resource that they truly need in order to understand their creative abilities or to truly flourish or thrive in who they have come to be. Many beings, as we walk into this next calendar year, will find themselves in similar situations where they are using physical means in order to try to manifest a physical result. And this is where it is going to be very important to integrate the non-physical aspect. So yes, you need to produce a living in terms of financial resource. And we ask you to evaluate, how is that already flowing to you? Or is there a way that it can more easily flow to you that will allow you the space and time to truly embellish that non-physical side of you? Because that's where the new path emerges. It often must come through a difficult transition of letting go of what we thought our path was to open to the potential of what we've already become. And this is the timeline we find ourselves in. When many of you are working through these situations, we advise a couple of things. First, we would say that in the planning, in the going to the mind or the mental process, you have to set the energy or the intention first of where you want to end up before you create the steps to get there. And oftentimes this seems backwards. Many of you think, well, I must create the steps in order to get where I want to go. No, we want you to really think into the truth of your soul, the truth of your desires, of what you want to experience in this life. And then allow the steps to unfold, not push them or force them through the mind, but allow them to come through the heart. Because that's the new portal. That's the center where many of you are focused. And that heart energy is connecting to one another in a quantum entanglement that serves all things. So you serving yourself in this way and moving into a new path and a new direction is going to allow others to actually open themselves to doing the same. And many of the structures that you've created here are not stable in this new energy because they have been very physical. So it will be a time for you to challenge yourself to move beyond the way that you thought processes had to come through you before and look at alternative ways to allow things to work for you as opposed to making them work in a way that you perceive.
Can you speak about addiction in light of one's spiritual path? An old addiction has resurfaced in the past few months. I understand that it could be here to allow me to do it differently and release and heal, yet the cycle of compulsive thoughts and self-destructive judgment and lack of self-forgiveness is crushing my soul. My spiritual practices are no longer a priority while in this cycle. I have so many more tools and spiritual resources now, it makes this more difficult to accept.
I bring the Arcturians in for this question. And as the Arcturians, we're very pleased to assist you in understanding the way in which addictions work on your planet. Your structure in particular as a physical being knows patterns very well. And many of you are familiar with sacred geometry and the way geometry repeats itself in patterns. This is all an addiction is. It is a pattern that you have formed so strongly within the physical body that it is something that is very difficult for you to function without. We often think about the body in terms of consciousness. Consciousness must rely on patterns in order to form or create reality. So when you have an addiction, you often think that the addiction is taking you, but you see, you have a pattern running that is creating the addiction. And so when we go into the DNA and we look at the DNA connection to this, oftentimes human beings feel as if addiction comes from family. There are lineages of time or family members that have often had a very similar type of addiction. And this is something that we cannot overcome because it is in our heritage. It is in our DNA. But all that is showing to you is the strength of the pattern as a quantum consciousness that you received as a part of a source energy entanglement. Any disease is the same thing. Some of you who perceive cancer perhaps as something that has been passed down from generation to generation is solely a pattern of collective consciousness that you have received as a physical experience. And this is the key that we want you to know. Disease, addiction, is a physical pattern. Physical patterns are very easily overcome when we activate the body in other areas. You see, many of you want to tune into that timeline and really pick it apart. You want to go into the reason why it's happening. You want to work on processes that will stop it from happening. Perhaps you want to take medications that will eliminate the disease, whatever it may be. And the solution to a problem never exists within the problem itself. The solution or the repatterning of the consciousness often exists in a different area. So if you have a negative pattern running, first we would say the reason for that is covering up something that you don't wish to acknowledge as a more activated part of the self. We often default to patterns because they are very comfortable for us. And you may think, well, cancer doesn't sound like a very comfortable pattern, or this addiction is not comfortable for me. And what we would say is that your body knows it very well. Your cells have formed a pattern that repeat. And that repeating pattern has come as a source of comfort for those cells. So the best advice we have for you is to truly activate the body or the experience in other areas. Because in order to let go of what you have running as a chronic pattern, you have to create new, more beneficial patterns that override it. And this is where we say that activating the body is going to be a new source of healing for your collective consciousness. And we're working with many healers in this time who have come as conduits here, who are rearranging the way in which they're healing, not to address or remove these areas of consciousness, but to truly activate the areas of the body that are remaining. Because if you think of this addiction, it's only a small space within your energy field. But the rest of you holds so much that can be used in order to what you would call overcome this addiction, but what we would call as your ability to activate source within. So looking outside of that pattern, and first of all, surrendering to the pattern, because when there is resistance to a pattern, we are in a lack state of vibration. So in this moment, surrendering to what is and being okay with the fact that that addiction exists, having compassion for the self that the addiction exists, is going to be very critical to this activation we're talking about. And we know that you have mentioned that you're often beating yourself up for this pattern. So it starts there. You must really pay close attention to the way the mind is interpreting your experience. We want to take you back to the way the collective message was brought in. Is anyone truly experiencing the same thing as another? Most certainly not. Well, it works within you as well. You're interpreting this addiction as something. You can also interpret it as something else. So work within the mind very carefully. Begin to catch yourself and use very strong mantras when the mind is taking you into a place of blame, shame, guilt, or defeat about this condition. Because just the repatterning of the mind alone sends a very valuable message to the cellular level, that at the cellular level, change can begin. Beyond that, in order to activate new patterns, we ask you to go deep into your desires and your greatest joy and seek out new patterns of existence that you create in your life. It can be anything. It can be something physical. It can be meditation. It can be something that you enjoy. It can be sitting in nature. It can be something you do 5 minutes a day. But you're going to focus your attention so much on creating that new pattern that old pattern of vibration just can't exist anymore, because the vibration of what you're activating over here is going to be so strong that it's going to override that physical pattern. And this is where we talked about physical, right? Disease in itself being a physical pattern. This is why there have been scientists who have explored the effect of emotions on disease, and that an emotion of happiness can heal something. It's because that non-physical energy so overrides the physical manifestations in the body that it will reorganize at the cellular level who you are. So become happier. Choose a pattern that you're going to create that is serving or fulfilling to you. And that is the catalyst for how you will heal this addiction.
I'm guided to ask you about the prevalent use of cannabis and how the frequency of that is affecting them. I have loved ones that seem unavailable when under this influence.
These are the Arcturians coming back through. We do wish to address this plant energy. In its purest state, cannabis in itself has very historic properties. It is a multidimensional energetic plant source. It comes from Earth, but beyond, in other words. And this is true of many of your resources here. In nature, what has taken place is a seeding of galactic energy. So when you look around you at the nature that you consider to be equal to Mother Earth, understand that it goes much beyond her source energy. It is a part of the universal or galactic family. And we consider this plant to be as well. But it is the way in which you choose to bring this plant into the body that has a specific effect. And we know that many of your humans have used this plant in ways that have not been intentional in creating harmony in the body. They've been intentional in more of a physical manifestation of perhaps guiding into something that feels as if it is a false sense of joy or a false sense of upliftment. But the true medicinal purpose of this plant as a multidimensional energy is to bring balance into the body. What it has the ability to do is speak to the chakras in a way that there is an alignment of truth. And in that moment, there's a grounding energy as well that enables a being to find a connection to Earth as a portal. You see, when one is in alignment with this portal energy of this plant, there is a solid foundation in order to function beyond what dimension creates as difficult in their environment. And there are many diseases, we would say, that are dimensional illnesses. There are some that are existing in dimensions that are unstable. There are some that have contracted diseases that affect their ability to perceive dimension a certain way. And this plant in particular has a very strong effect on the leveling out of the dimensional ability with the physical body. But when it's used in a way that is not complementary, meaning it's not in its original state, it can take a body outside of its current dimension in order to experience bliss or happiness or peace, but it's very short-lived. And what happens is there's an effect with the connection of the mind. The brain in itself is a very valuable organism, and it has many components that connect with the body as far as systems or structures. For example, your hormonal response, or the way in which you can experience empathy through the secretions of those hormones. And we see that when this plant is not used in its purest intent, that after a long period of time, there can be an effect on the organism of the brain in its connection to those hormonal responses. So over time, beings who are not using this plant in integrity can have a direct effect with their telepathic exchange, their ability to feel empathy, or their ability to even communicate with the self and evaluate what is appropriate for the self in connection to the soul.
We'd like to speak with the Anunnaki, please. What can we expect with the events of Nibiru and pole shifting as with our well-being? And if there's not enough time to fulfill our life path due to overwhelming events as things happening in our life?
We wish to address first the movement of the poles and what you classify as Nibiru, and this is the time and place of which we offer a grand vibrational rearrangement. Because when you speak of your record, of course, we have acknowledged that there has been much discussion of density as well as destiny in this conversation. And we bring both of these into this answer because there has been an acknowledgement that your earth being has a record, and that record is now being served as an exchange with the universe. And the shifting of the poles has a very direct tie to that vibrational release from Mother Earth. It was a time in which there was new information that was meant to be accessed, but yet at the same time, there is an effect of the rate of consciousness on how that record is unfolding. So when you speak of the relationship of time, we have to bring the human collective into this analogy because you, as beings or conduits of the frequency of Mother Earth, are having a dimensional effect, or perhaps, as you call it, a timing effect on the way this situation is unfolding. So we see that the way in which you have raised your consciousness has actually been beneficial to the way in which this reorganization has taken place. And what's taken a further step in humanity forward is that you've arrived on a new timeline. And when we speak of this new timeline, it is, of course, a collective timeline. And all that means is that we've evaluated where you are vibrationally as a one collective. Back to the original analogy that you all come together and affect that one timeline with your various perspectives. And there's a neutral state that is held. This new timeline that we speak of is holding more of a fourth dimensional energy. And that fourth dimensional energy has become quite solid here. And this is good because what it enables now is that the earth to shift in many, many aspects. So you bring time into this question, and we wish to speak to time because time in itself is changing. You have been adapting to a very linear form of time on your planet, although it has been alluded to in this transmission that time operates in a spiral. But you see, truly what's going on is that you are creating time. Time is not creating you. You as a human consciousness are creating time. And time has an effect on the way that you perceive your reality. This is why many of you are contemplating why so many things are changing from your history, your past history. You're seeing it differently. And it's not that it is changed in itself, it's that you have changed. And that the way that you're vibrationally reacting to your reality has changed. So you have to perceive things differently in this quantum entanglement. When we talk about time, we also need to alert you to the fact that the light body activations that are taking place are very significant on your planet. You have allowed this to take place by the work that you have done and the initiation of your own soul. So as that light body has become activated, your physical reality is going to be changing in response to the proximity of your light body. This is not only in your individual state, in your singular state, it's also collective. So there is a light body of Mother Earth. There is an aura of Mother Earth. There is a light body that you have in singular fashion and an aura that you have in singular fashion. Those are your, we'll call them your cosmic glasses of how you review your Earth experience. So you're actually, many of you, beginning to operate on future timelines. We use the word future because it's something that you've already created that you're now existing on. And that is why things are beginning to look different. Now, the location that you say of Nibiru, it's really having more of a dramatic effect on the way your vibrational energies are being attuned. And there are many planets, not just this collective consciousness, that are coming closer right now to Earth. That proximity is due to the magnetics here. The pole shift has allowed your Earth being to become heightened in its magnetic frequency, just as you have become more heightened in your magnetic frequency. And this has attracted more planetary energies in close proximity, time and space reality-wise, to your experience. This is affecting all areas, not just your perception, but also your communication. It is going to change your physical bodies, the way that you will become lighter in the physical body and able to interpret new information. It's allowing the opening of the chakra portals outside of your physical body to reconnect to its galactic history through Earth. So there are many dramatic changes taking place, but we perceive them as being very beneficial, especially for what we would call a lower vibrational reptilian consciousness that has embodied your planet. Because this consciousness in particular must use physical means in order to manipulate your energy. And the more that these transitions take hold, the less this reptilian consciousness will have to work with. Because as your light bodies are activated, as you are receiving the beneficial frequency of these planetary alignments, these physical means are no longer going to have the same effect on you that they have had before.
I've heard that some people believe in the hollow earth theory, also the flat earth theory, since the government will not let us know of alien life forms and even covered up when NASA talked about the 5 planets that may hold life close to our reach. When they were asked by someone, their account was suspended. So what are your thoughts on our Earth having an inner Earth, and is the Earth round or flat?
The Council of Light is very pleased to answer this question. We wish to say that the Earth is neither round or flat. Your Earth is a consciousness. It is a vibrating being. And within it, there are many dimensional levels. So, for example, many of you are familiar with ancient Atlantis. And ancient Atlantis being a part of this planet in your linear history or your linear timeline. Ancient Atlantis still exists within this earthly plane. And when we talk about within the earth, because oftentimes we allude to dimensional consciousness existing within earth, we want to give 2 separate analogies of what that means. You live in a very 3rd to 4th dimensional access plane, meaning that you're very attuned to physicality. Yet at the same time, there are dimensions that exist here beyond your perception, So within and upon Earth as a being, there are dimensional realities that are living, breathing beings that exist that you are not perceiving. So within the space of her, when we say within, we are talking within her frequency. Mother being as a shape is not a perfect analogy of the way she vibrates. You perceive her as round if you are looking at her from the cosmos. And the reason for that has more to do with sacred geometric patterns and sound than it does with physical shape. Light in itself is a sphere. And there are concentric circles that make up your cellular body. So when you are perceiving planets, when you are perceiving the outer cosmos, oftentimes you see shape. But that shape is something that you are attuned to seeing as a sacred geometric interaction. She is a being just as you are a being. And are any of you the same in your shape? We would say no. You all manifest differently in your shape, in your color, in your vibration, and she does as well. But within you, within your aura, there's so much information. And it's the same within her. There is so much information here. Now, we often allude to the fact that there is a lower vibrational consciousness that exists within Mother Earth, within the core of Mother Earth. We want to explain very specifically what we mean by the core of Mother Earth and what this consciousness exists as. Mother being as a light being has a core which is her source God energy. It is a light core that is within you as well. This is what we consider the connection that you have to and of Earth through your human consciousness to God. When we speak of a reptilian consciousness that exists within the core of Mother Earth, that means that a consciousness has enabled itself to separate you from source consciousness. And it exists here in many forms. So that reptilian consciousness within the core of Mother Earth is not to be taken literal, that within a sphere of a physical planet, there is a consciousness that is taken up home. We know that there are many dimensional realities within Earth where beings exist. But when we refer specifically to the reptilian consciousness taking up home within your core, that means they have separated you from God. And they exist in many aspects here of their specific timelines in physical and non-physical form, manipulating your consciousness. Now we want to address specifically the question about the government and hiding things about our planet. First of all, we would say that many of you give so much credit to your government agencies for knowing the truth. Yet at the same time, much of the information that they have is very skewed as well. And their human form is contributing to many mistakes and misinterpretations. We will use the analogy of your Bible. Many of you know that the Bible was written in human form and takes many versions. But of course, it is interpreted differently by many beings. Your government in itself is a manifestation of your consciousness. So as you are holding that government in responsibility for not letting out information that has been hidden from you, we ask you to look at the holographic mirror to what you have caused here as a collective consciousness in relationship to what has not been exposed. Your frequency is still vibrating at a speed that is not allowing full disclosure to take place. And full disclosure in itself, as you have interpreted, is your government letting out secrets. We don't see those secrets to be all that important, because what we believe is that all of you have the ability to connect to the information that you need within. And we see an uprising of the collective consciousness through ascension, completely understanding what's taking place here as a planetary consciousness beyond what the government is going to perhaps release. There are some that have traveled into some of these dimensional realities that exist within Earth. And they seem as if they are within a sphere of consciousness. But you see, when you're traveling dimension, you're going to access information differently. That means your perception of reality is going to change. So, regardless of whether these government officials are traveling off planet to a location such as Mars, for example, or traveling inside the planet to a different dimensional experience, they're all going to perceive it through their own consciousness, because it requires a different level of consciousness in order to integrate that information. So we're here to tell you that there are many that inhabit this planet. The analogy of round or flat to our perception is really not a valid analogy. That Mother Earth is a vibrational being that is always changing, and that she is a consciousness that holds much information. And we believe that information is now beginning to come to the surface because you are allowing it through your own ascension.
There has been information about Germany meeting with another race in Antarctica, and we've seen plans of what their spaceships look like and how they run. Can you tell us what is really going on in Antarctica? What discovery was made there, and how might it impact the world we live in?
Yes, I'm getting a new consciousness stepping in to help us with this. So I'm connecting with the Tahitians, and they're an ancient collective of Tahitian natives. They want to say that they have been a part of many ancient cultures beyond just what they identify themselves to be in this transmission. And they have much knowledge to share about earth portals, as well as areas in which will be discovered as energetic transmission points for manifestation of beings, as well as the way that we will uncover history. So going into the first question about Germany and the way that these ships are being uncovered, that is a separate timeline. So what you are seeing is that a timeline is being accessed. And this often happens on the planet when we have discovery of things. We think we've discovered something from the past that is coming up as evidence of what has taken place, and we can use it as knowledge. But truly, we are always operating in the present moment. And in that present moment field of energy, there are timelines that exist that are future manifestations of what our Earth consciousness has created. So in particular, this is actually a future manifestation of how energy and technology has come forward to help us be able to explore the universe in a way that was different than what our government allowed us to do, or what our collective consciousness was able to manifest at the time. In particular, what these ships are being described as are different than what their physical form is showing. So there is some information that has not been brought to the surface about the way that these ships will be able to teach the collective consciousness about their own abilities. When we look at the structure of the human consciousness, we know that you are all able to travel interdimensionally and astrally. And some of these ships are being revealed right now, not as a means to support disclosure as it has been predetermined on your planet, but actually as a way to help you better understand your own structure as a vehicle. And there's some plasma energy that is a part of these ships that will be discovered. That plasma energy is equal to human plasma, and the way organisms are able to be used to travel through space and time. This plasma in itself can have very beneficial effects on health and the humanity collective that is operating in disease, because it can help them to move into a future timeline where that disease no longer exists. When we talk about Antarctica, we also need to bring in the understanding of imprints, because many of you understand imprints on your collective equal to what you know as crop circles. So, for example, when there are beings that come into the earth aura or the earth energy and leave an imprint behind, such as a crop circle, there's information that's left behind in that imprint. And there are many imprints on your earth that have been left behind through time, because when we look at the way that dimension operates, it's similar to the time spiral that's been talked about. Okay, so if you consider the spiral we've been talking about, at the beginning of that spiral was everything. There was God, there was creation, there was the beginnings of the planet, there was the seeding of the human consciousness. Well, that was in a 12th dimensional reality. Your earth, your humanness, everything that formed here from the beginning of time began in a 12th dimensional reality. So if those dimensions all existed and we're on a spiral of time where we're revisiting past, quote unquote, we'll say past, we have a dimensional timeline now that left an imprint for us. And we get to uncover what that imprint is in order for us to come to more realization. So from our perspective, we feel that this is a very positive interaction with consciousness, that similar to what you've discovered in your ancient pyramids, what will be discovered in Antarctica is equal to what your collective consciousness left behind for itself in another dimension. It gives you a point of perspective to be able to take now what you have learned and where you have grown your vibration and apply it to activating parts of your DNA from this understanding. We believe, though, we want to say wholeheartedly that we believe that the human consciousness has a direct connection to the way this information unfolds. And this is often not what's talked about when these situations come to light. Many become very, we'll say, lower vibrationally connected to the realization that there is information coming forward. And they perceive into a cover-up. And they get very focused on the energy of that cover-up, and that someone must be to blame, and there must be someone held responsible. And there's a lot of digging. It's very similar to the conversation that was brought forward about rearranging disease or rearranging addiction. You get very caught in that lane of lower vibration, and you don't look at the opportunity that's truly unfolding before you. So what we see taking place is, because many of the people that are watching the unfolding of what's taking place in Antarctica are very angry about the government hiding things. They're actually causing a stall in that timeline. In other words, timelines evolve through our consciousness. So if our consciousness is focused on bringing people to justice or being in an angry interpretation of what's unfolding, we're only going to create a distance between that reality and what we currently want to understand better. So we're actually not serving ourselves from a human standpoint when we connect with information in a lower vibrational way. So our advice to you is truly to stay inquisitive about what's unfolding there. We don't believe that it is something that is meant to be used as detrimental to the human consciousness. But we know that that polarity exists in all forms of energy. So if you choose to tune into something as a potential timeline of destruction, it most certainly will be. Yet at the same time, this imprint that has been left behind, coming through at this time in the collective consciousness with all of the stars and alignments of planets that have come in, can truly be a realization that your consciousness is unfolding now higher dimensional information.
If stars are light above the Earth, do these beings who have contact with you from different star systems come from different dimensions, or do these star systems have a physical position?
Yes, this is the Pleiadians coming in to answer this question. There are some star systems that have physical locations that are stagnant. And for example, in the Pleiades, our star system, although over time there have been adjustments and movements in those planets, for the most part stay physically very stable. There are other planets and star systems that are constantly evolving and moving through consciousness. And some may appear at times in the galactic star system, and at other times they may shapeshift or manifest as more non-physical. This has a lot to do with the way that they hold dimension. To make this quite simple, dimension is purely information. So when there is a star system or a star line that is more stagnant or physical in its manifestation, it's typically holding a more dense dimension. Where collectives of beings reside that are non-physical, they are holding more information, so they are attuned to a more 12th dimensional energy. When this channel is accessing these beings, it is not a physical manifestation whatsoever. It is a connection or a cooperative agreement of her vibrational energy and intention with our own. She opens as a field of potential, and her intention directs the information that is best suited for what is needed by those connecting to it. And then an adjustment is made. So there is often a frequency exchange. There is a match of frequencies in which we can manifest in what we would call a denser form, to allow that communication to come through in a way that's interpreted correctly. So these beings that are speaking through this channel in this moment, the star systems, the star collectives that come through, are manifesting in a non-physical form through intention and through travel, through time-space reality, to allow a message to come through.
Is there a difference between a spirit and a soul?
A soul is a spirit. This is the Pleiadians also. When we talk of the soul energy is equal to a spirit. So you are a spirit in human form. Yet at the same time, the soul energy holds many aspects of itself. So this is why you get very caught up on past life information or actually integrating parts of your soul, because it holds much spirit. In other words, you are projecting yourself into other relationships of energy with other beings, with other planets, with other star systems and star lines, and that in itself is a spirit as well. So your soul energy knows itself as many. The higher self is very integral in this connection, because your higher self really helps you to anchor into your current reality and perceive it for what it is. Because let's face it, we say, if you were to know all of the spirit that you are, it would be very difficult for you to manage in your day-to-day experience. So your higher self comes in to actually assist the soul level, to focus its energy in one experience at a time, especially in physical form. Yet at the same time, we want to say, your soul is on a journey of rediscovering itself. And there are times when you need to integrate those other beings, those other spirits that you are or that you have been, in order to better understand the fullness or the wholeness of that information you have. And we make this equal to dimensional reality. As you move dimensions, more of that soul or spirit information becomes available to you. And you're meant to integrate it in order to serve yourself.
Mary Magdalene, please. What is love?
Love is source energy experiencing itself through all things.
Could you conclude the session, please?
Yes. Those who have assembled here come from a love frequency. As source energy, we know what love is because we have not only embodied it through our experience, but we have walked a human experience as well. And we know that emotion oftentimes is confused as love. But love in its purest state is a being. It is not an emotion. Emotion flows through love to expand itself. We have been very pleased to bring these messages forward today, and we wish that you understand that a vibrational exchange has also been offered, and we wish you much peace in the integration of that vibration. Ooh, it took me a minute there. I was like, ooh, grounding. Where's the chair? Any questions anyone has after that? I can answer. Okay. Well, it was such a pleasure. Thank you for coming. And I hope you'll stay for Ethan's session. He's got a great one next. We'll probably take a little break.
you did
Barb,
have, yeah, you did have there was a lot of beads, a lot of orbs throughout this time, probably more so than, I've seen, and I thought that you had quite a lot of really insightful answers, and it really touched my soul.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. I'm glad you say that, because that is one thing when my consciousness, when I'm out of body, I really truly am kind of trying to listen, and I just hear a jumbled mess. And I don't know, Ethan could probably tell you how many times after my channeled session, I thought that was a disaster. And then I listened back, I'm like, wow, that all made sense. So it's kind of interesting to hear that. But yeah, thank you.